So just hours ago, Canon just announced a few items. They were the Canon R3 and 3 new lenses, the RF 100mm, the RF 400mm, and the RF 600mm. Now, I will not talk about the 400 and 600 lenses because those are exactly the same as the EF ones, just in RF mount. So I will talk about the R3 and the RF 100mm macro lens. I'm Richard and welcome to ZP Productions. Now, if you're interested to just see the R3, carry on. If you're interested to just see the macro lens, go to the bookmarks and jump ahead. Now, the R3 is a development announcement, so there is no date of launch, and the information provided is a lot lesser than even the R5 development announcement. Firstly, all we know that it is a brand new body. It is a R3, not a R1, which means there is going to be a R1 in the future, something even better than the R3. It has a body same as the 1D series, which is very rugged, very durable. In fact, that's what they claim. It's going to be as durable and rugged as the 1D series bodies. Now, if you look at the picture itself, you notice there's 4 buttons in front, so and an integrated vertical grip. So I'm assuming they also will have the integrated big batteries, which is useful because if you actually use the R5 before, when you shoot at high speed, the performance do drop once the battery reduces below 60%. So with the bigger battery, it does help. Now, for this particular announcement of the R3, they only announced photographic functions. Unlike the R5, they actually announced videographic functions. Firstly, they didn't say how many megapixels, but they did say it's a brand new stack sensor. Now, stack sensor is something that did not exist in Canon. At least I don't know. If somebody knows, put down in the comment below. But they do have global sensors, but stack sensor, they never once used it before. This is the same sensor used in the A9 and A1. I mean the technology, not the sensor itself, because I assume that Canon will actually build their own sensor. And with the stack sensor, of course, you get the same performance like the A9 and A1, which is firstly very, very little rolling shutter because the lines are reading out at a much quicker pace. And next, you get to shoot at high FPS like the A1 and the A9s without any mechanical shutter, purely electronic shutter. In fact, based on the specification announced, it will be running at 30 FPS across any shooting mode, and that's what they actually show here. Now, that is pretty much it. A stack sensor with 30 FPS shooting mode. The other 2 things they talk about is the autofocus, but it is a little bit grey. So for autofocus, there will be improved subject recognition. That includes what we have today, which is human AF, eye AF, body AF, head AF, and of course animal AF. But Canon also claims there will be new subject recognition capabilities, allowing you to probably track something other than just animals and humans. Maybe like what the EM1X have, ability to track cars, vehicle, planes, and trains. Maybe that is the function that Canon is talking about when they say improve subject recognition or new subject recognition. Okay, that's one thing. And the next thing they are talking about was that this camera will have the ability to detect where you are looking at and therefore set your initial focus point. Now, this is actually a quite cool technology because it helps you to quickly move the AF box to where you want and then from there track. Now, that's because in the scene especially when, let's say, you do sports or you shoot families, there's a lot of faces, right? Knowing where to start the initial AF point will probably help. Or let's say you do birding, knowing where the bird initially is will help the system a lot in terms of tracking functions. So I'm assuming that's where they are coming from, the ability to use your eyes to pinpoint the initial focusing point, which is probably a lot quicker than joysticks and touch panels and what's not. So that is pretty much it for the R3. Now, there's one thing that will interest me a lot. Because the R3 now is a much bigger body, I'm pretty sure the R3 will do whatever the R5 can do in terms of video, but without overheating. Because now with a body nearly, I say 50% in terms of mass, I assume that they will probably improve the heat sink and everything. This body, I expect it to probably shoot, RAW or whatever video format without ever overheating, and that will be big news for the people who are doing video. Now, buying an R3 to do video sounds a little bit weird, but it's the same as people buying 1D to do videos, and I can understand where they are coming from. And if they can do everything the R5 can do in video, without ever overheating, the R3 is actually pretty fantastic of a camera for the purpose of shooting videos. Now, that's so much for the R3. It's still a development announcement. Let's wait for more information and I will update you guys in another video. The next thing we'll talk about is the RF 100mm Macro. Now, I talked a little bit about it because it was a rumor at that time, but now they come out with the official specs. Firstly, it is a macro that goes beyond 1:1. That's a big deal. 1.4 times macro, which means you can even go closer, as you can see in this shot here, where Canon illustrates it, you can even go way closer than what you could do with the old 1:1 macro lenses. Now that is a big deal because it's not common to have a lens that go beyond 1:1 macro, really. You can go and check on most of the lenses these days. When they claim they're macro, they're not even 1:1, they're 0.5:1. But this is 1:1.4, which is a big deal, really. And then the interesting part is the autofocus mechanism is using a dual USM system, which means it's probably focusing the front and back element and therefore allow them to achieve better close focusing and of course faster focusing. Now this is technology that will be used in some systems, but I'm not really sure how Canon will implement it. Now beyond just focusing system, the next improvement is this SA control that we talked about last time. Now nobody knows what is it, but now Canon has officially announced that it is the spherical aberration control. Put in simple terms, when you twist that ring, you either get something that is very edgy with all the very rough, edgy bokeh, ring-like bokeh, or if you turn the other side, it becomes a really soft, dreamy look, like applying a pro mist onto your lens itself. Now this is a effects control. I'm not really sure how many people will actually appreciate it on a macro lens, but it's something new. I guess Canon just want to try something. But I can see how it's going to be useful, especially for portraits. In fact, I'm quite surprised that Canon actually markets it more like a portrait lens in the video that they launched rather than a macro lens because of the spherical aberration control ring. Now, this function I would say is a lot more useful if it was on a portrait lens, such as a 85mm F2 or 85mm 1.2 or maybe 100mm F2 or maybe the 135 1.4 rumored lens. If those lenses have also the SA control, I think it will be a lot better because those lenses are truly built for portrait. Now, having this dreamy feel is actually useful, especially for things like video where you want a slight glow, you don't want so rough and sharp like a modern lens, and I think there is a purpose to it. But for a macro lens, I'm not too sure. I mean nobody will probably use the SA when doing macro. So it is a quite interesting decision that Canon is trying to do. But it is still a new innovation, and I'm quite excited to see real-world pictures of that, not marketing pictures, because I do not know what kind of effects they apply. But if those real-world pictures really work out like what the SA control does, it's actually pretty useful if you are doing portraiture or doing videos with a 100mm macro lens, which is not uncommon, by the way. You probably can apply the SA control to get the same effect as you would have if you applied Pro Mist filters or something along the line. And that's about it. I hope you enjoyed this video. It is quite exciting to see new camera being launched and new lens being launched. Of course, the R3 is just a development announcement, but the technology they are bringing to will bring Canon on par with what Sony is doing. And I mean, everybody was expecting that. They didn't expect it so quickly. And not only that, the R3 is not the R1. So if the R3 is probably a R5 with 30 megapixels, and the R3 is not R1. So if the R3 is technically a R5 on steroids with faster shooting speed, what is the R1? I'm really excited to know what Canon is thinking for the R1. Is it some 40 FPS, 50 FPS, or maybe 100 megapixel, 30 FPS? Nobody knows really, but it is really exciting. Why they introduce it as an R3 and not the R1 when the specs easily beat the last generation's 1D series handily. And in fact, it is going to be so superior to the R5 if whatever Canon is trying to do actually actualizes in a proper product. That's about it for today. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.